Warm greetings and welcome, dear audience. This is Dr. Esther Mala, your firstly and successful global educator, SDG, ESG, STEM, and technology enthusiast from Malaysia. Join our exclusive research series today um, with our masterclass, which aims to enhance knowledge, foster innovation, and create awareness of rapidly evolving technology landscape. And particularly, we are doing research series. Yeah. Uh, Now we are doing the intermediate level. Stay ahead in your field by equipping yourself with essential skills and future ready expertise. Empower your learning, elevate your career. Dear respected, precious audience, esteemed academician, our dedicated project team of Elegant Empire Education welcomes you to our professional masterclass, again with our favorite awesome and brilliant personality, Ambassador Professor Dr. Rania Lampu from Greece. Her topic today is Understanding Research Series, Research Design Essentials, lecture number 9. Welcome, dear Professor Dr. Rania Lampu. The stage is yours.
Good evening. Good evening from here from Athens. Thank you very much, Dr. Estera. I'm very happy every time we conduct this kind of series, which are very, precious for researchers, especially beginners. Already, we have approached the essentials and the basics of the research process, and the research design also was presented in previous sessions. But today, we're going to adopt a more holistic approach. We want to present some essentials of research design, because, as I mentioned last time, research is more than just data collection. It's about asking the right questions, designing sound methods, and drawing meaningful conclusions. And at the heart of this process is always lies the research design, the blueprint that defines the quality, the validity, and impact of our findings. So allow me to share my presentation. This is in alignment, of course, with the previous session.
Yeah, can you please upload
Yes.
your...
Today, we're going to adopt a more holistic.
I think it's visible now. Can you see now my presentation? Dr. Estera, is it visible?
Yes, it's visible.
Can you see the change of slides also?
Yes.
Okay, thank you. So when we talk about research design, is something which includes all the foundational elements that guide the planning, the structuring, and execution of a research study. A well-structured research design ensures that the study addresses the research questions effectively and produces valid, reliable, and generalizable results. So some key essentials of research design. First, you need to ask yourself, what are you trying to find out? So a specific, well-defined and researchable question or hypothesis is essential. Second, the objectives of the study. This should align with the research question. Objectives can be exploratory, descriptive, explanatory, or evaluative. Third, the type of research design, quantitative, so experiment surveys, qualitative, interviews, or ethnography, mixed methods, so a combination of both. And variables and constructs, the dependent variables, we have explained last time, the dependent variables, the factors you manipulate, the dependent variables, the outcomes you measure, and control variables, the factors kept constant to avoid interference. The sampling design defines who will be studied and how, so population versus sample, the sampling techniques, random, stratified, purposive, etc., and sample size considerations. The data collection methods That will be surveys, questionnaires, interviews, focus groups, observations, archival research, and instrumentation, because tools must be valid, measure what they're supposed to measure, and reliable, consistently produce the same results. Pre-testing or pilot testing may be included. The data analysis plan, because this is important, it specifies how data will be processed and interpreted. If we talk about quantitative research, then we use statistical methods, t-test, regression. If we have qualitative research, then we will go for thematic analysis or coding or content analysis. And the time frame, the timeline, very important, because outlines when each part of the research will be conducted. The ethical considerations always start from informed consent, anonymity, confidentiality, the avoidance of harm, and the ethical approval from the committees, the ethical review boards or ethics committees. The limitations, because constraints outside the researcher's control, everything which is outside the research control is a limitation, and the limitations, there are boundaries intentionally set by the researcher. For example, when we only study a specific age group. The budget and resources, these are related with feasibility, personnel, tools, travel, materials, etc. So, first, we need to understand what is research design is the blueprint or the framework for conducting a research study. It outlines how the research will be conducted, from identifying the research problem to collecting, analyzing data, interpreting data. It helps actually ensure that the evidence collected, the evidence gathered enables the researcher to address the research problem as unambiguously as possible. So why research design is important in the research process? Because it guides the researcher in systematically addressing the research question. It ensures logical flow and structure to the study, so it provides a clear plan. Second, a good design helps produce accurate, means valid, and consistent, means reliable results, so minimizes bias and error, ensures validity and reliability. Optimizes use of resources because it helps manage time, effort, and money effectively, reduces waste of data or effort due to poor planning, and facilitates objective decision-making, defines what data to collect, how to collect it, and how to analyze it, ensures that decisions are based on evidence, not guesswork. And of course, supports ethical research because identifies ethical considerations and ensures that they are addressed. So informed consent and anonymity increases credibility of findings because a well-structured design boosts the trustworthiness of conclusions drawn from the study. If, let's give an example, if you want to study the effect of sleep on student performance, without a research design, you may collect random data and you may get inconclusive results. With a research design, you will define the hypothesis, your variables, your sampling method, your data tools, and analysis strategy, making this way your findings meaningful and reproducible. Here you can see a summary table which shows that research design is a structured plan outlining how to conduct a research study, what is the purpose to guide the collection, the measurement, and analysis of data. And the importance is that it ensures always the validity, the reliability, and the ethical integrity. The outcome is related with credible, reproducible, and meaningful research findings. Now, we need to clarify the difference between research design and research methodology. So what is the difference? The research design is the overall strategy or blueprint for conducting a research project. So this actually highlights what, how, and when data will be collected and analyzed. It focuses on structure and plan. And the key components of research design include the type of research, experimental, correlational, the data collection tools, surveys, interviews, and the sampling strategy, the time frame. That would be cross-sectional or longitudinal. On the other hand, research methodology is what? Research methodology refers to the theoretical analysis of the methods and principles which are used in research. So the goal here is to explain the philosophical and analytical justification for the methods that we have chosen. So the focus is the rational theoretical underpinning, and the key components include the philosophical approach. In our first sessions, we have explained all this paradigm, the research paradigms, the positivism, the predictivism, constructivism. What will be your research paradigm? Qualitative versus quantitative approaches, and justification for specific methods and tools. I hope this also, this difference is clear. So the summary shows that the research design is a plural plan. Research methodology is a theoretical framework and analysis of methods. The focus of research design is the practical layout. For research methodology, the focus is on philosophical analytical justification. The research design includes tools, structures, timeline. The research methodology includes reasoning behind choice and methods. And the question for research design will be, how will the study be conducted? And for the research methodology, why were these methods chosen? So what are the major types of research design? The major types can be broadly categorized into three main groups. Exploratory research design. For example, these actually three main types. These designs guide how researchers collect, how they analyze, how they interpret data. The first one, exploratory research design, aims to explore a problem or phenomenon when little is known about it. The key characteristics is that it's about a flexible and structured design. It's qualitative in nature, generates ideas or hypotheses. And the common methods which are used here, which literature review, the expert interviews, focus groups, case studies, and observations. The second type of research design is what we call descriptive research design. Our goal here is to describe characteristics of a population phenomenon. So the key features is that this design is structured and pre-planned, is often quantitative, not qualitative. We have seen that exploratory is qualitative in nature, here is often quantitative. It focuses on what rather than why. And the common types is the cross-sectional design. What is this? When data is collected at one point in time. Longitudinal design. What is this? When data are collected over time. Survey research and observational methods. Causal or experimental research design. The aim here is to define causal and effect relationships. The key characteristics is that it's about high control over variables. It's about manipulation of independent variables, use of control experimental groups. And the common types of this research design is first, we talk about true experimental design, for example, randomized controlled trials, or quasi-experimental design, where there is no random assignment. The field experiments, which are conducted in real-life settings, and laboratory experiments, where there are always controlled environments. So here are the three major types of research design. The purpose of exploratory is to understand issues, to create hypotheses. So some of the methods are focus groups, case studies, interviews. On the other hand, the descriptive design describes characteristics of functions. That here we use surveys, observational studies. For the causal and experimental research design, here we test the hypothesis and we define the causality. And the methods usually involve randomized experiments and control groups. So what are the characteristics of a good research design? First, we need to determine cause and effect relationships. The key characteristic is here the high control over variables. And the clear design actually should align with well-defined research questions or hypotheses. So remember this, that objectives must be specific, measurable, achievable, relevant, and time-bound, what we call SMART objectives. Second is related with validity. Two types of validity that you need to know. The internal validity, which ensures that the observed effects are due to the independent variable and not other factors. And the external validity, which ensures that the results can be generalized beyond the sample. Reliability. The design should allow for consistent results when the study is repeated under similar conditions. Instruments and procedures should produce stable and consistent data. Then, control over variables. The design should minimize the influence of extraneous variables, so confounding factors, through randomization, matching, or control groups. The appropriate methodology. So here is the research method, qualitative, quantitative, mixed method. Should suit the research question. So here we have proper sampling methods and tools that should be selected. And the ethical considerations that research should protect the rights, the confidentiality, the well-being of participants, and it should follow ethical guidelines that obtain necessary approvals, the informed consent that I mentioned before. Flexibility. While it is structured, the design should always allow room for modifications if unexpected issues arise during the study. Feasibility. The research should be realistic in terms of time, resources, and skills. The design should be practical to implement within given constraints. And clear protocols. We need clear protocols for how data will be collected, processed, and analyzed. We need to use appropriate statistical or thematic analysis tools. So we need a thorough data collection analysis plans. And logical structure, because the design should have a clear sequence from problem statement to objectives, then to methodologies, then data collection, then analysis, and then conclusion. Now, here is a clear comparison between quantitative research design. The previous sessions we have explained all this, just a brief repetition. The qualitative research design tries to explore meanings, experience, understanding. On the other hand, with quantitative, we test measures, we measure variables, we analyze statistical data. Qualitative has to do with non-numerical data. Qualitative is inductive, the other one is deductive. In qualitative research design, we have interviews, focus groups, open-ended surveys. On the other hand, with quantitative, we have experiments, structured surveys. With qualitative, we have thematic content, narrative analysis. With quantitative, we have statistical analysis, regression, correlation, t-test. With qualitative, we have in-depth understanding. On the other hand, the quantitative, we focus on cause-effect relationships. With qualitative, we have usually small purposeful samples. In quantitative, we have large representative samples. And what is the researcher role? In qualitative research design is immersed, subjective interpreter. On the other hand, in the quantitative research design, we have an objective, detached observer. Let's give an example. If you want, what is the study topic? Let's say that we want to explore students' experiences with online learning during the pandemic. What is the method that we use? Conduct in-depth interviews with 15 university students and analyze emerging themes. This is the qualitative example. The quantitative example, the study topic would be to measure the impact of daily screen time on academic performance. And the method will be used is to distribute a structured questionnaire to 300 high school students and analyze the data using statistical software. So when to use each? Use qualitative design when the goal is to explore, understand complex issues. Use quantitative design when the goal is to measure, test, or predict using numerical data. So what are the differences we mentioned before about exploratory, descriptive, explanatory research designs? Now we need to know the differences. That here the purpose is to explore a problem that is not well understood. So we need to try to gain insight, to create ideas, identify potential research question hypotheses, when it's advisable to use it, at the early stages of research when little is known about the topic. And the methods are included, multi-level reviews, observation, etc. What is the outcome here? The outcome is preliminary understanding of framework, and it's not intended to provide conclusive answers. For example, when we want to investigate how people feel about using AI in mental health therapy, this is exploratory research design. Now, when to use descriptive research design, we want to describe the characteristics of a population, phenomenon. We will try to provide here a snapshot of variables at a specific point in time. When we want to focus on what, when, where, and how of a topic. So in this case, it's advisable to use observational established case study surveys. In the outcome, it's about factual, accurate, and systematic description, which does not explain why something happens. So example, when we want to measure the percentage of college students who experience anxiety through exams. Then explanatory research design. Here we try to explain causes and relationships between variables, try to identify cause and effect relationships, when to use it when we want to test a hypothesis or understand why or how something happens. Then the methods that we will use include experiments or case experiments or regression analysis. And the outcome would be causal inferences, a deeper understanding of relationships between variables. For example, when we want to test whether cognitive behavioral therapy reduces depression symptoms in adults. And a comparison table here. Exploratory discovers insights, descriptive describes features or patterns, explanatory determines cause and effect. The research question. In terms of research questions, exploratory, what is going on, descriptive, what is happening, and explanatory, why is this happening. In terms of approach, exploratory design, it's open-ended and flexible. The descriptive design is structured but not experimental. The explanatory approach, highly structured but often experimental. And what about the outcome? Exploratory, it's about ideas, hypotheses. The descriptive, it's about accurate descriptions, and explanatory, it's about causal links and explanations. Now, what about sampling? What is the difference between probability and non-probability sampling? The difference lies primarily in how participants are selected from the population, which affects how representative the sample is and whether results can be generalized to the whole population. So in the probability sample, every member of the population has a known and non-zero chance of being selected. What are the key characteristics? It is based on random selection. This allows for generalization for the population, and this reduces selection bias. The common types that you need to know is samples, a simple random sampling. Each member has an equal chance. The stratified sampling, when a population is divided into subgroups, strata, then the randomly sample. The systematic sampling, when here every member is selected from a list, and cluster sampling, when groups, clusters are randomly selected, then all or some members within clusters are studied. The non-probability sampling. Here, not all members have a known or equal chance of being selected. The key characteristics is that this sampling is based on researchers' judgment. It cannot confidently generalize to the population, and it's more prone to bias, of course. The common types is what we call convenient sampling, when we select those who are easiest to reach. For example, when we want to reach people in the mall. Purpose sampling, when we select specific individuals who meet criteria. Quota sampling, when we want to ensure specific quotas, 50% of men, 50% of women, but using no random methods. A snowball sampling, when existing participants recruit future ones. This is used in hard-to-reach populations. So here we can give an example. When we want to survey, for example, people who walk past a coffee shop because they are easily accessible. This is what we call no probability sampling. On the other hand, we want to give an example for probability sample. Is, for example, we want to select 100 students at random from a university's complete student registry. So we have seen the differences. The first one, probability is random, the other one is no random. The generalizability is high for the probability sampling, the other one is low. There is a high risk of bias for the no-probability sampling, and we said about the examples that probability sampling is simply random, stratified, and for the no-probability sampling, it's about convenience, purposeful, positive, and snowball. So if we want to describe the steps which are involved in selecting a representative sample, selecting a representative sample is a critical step in research in order to ensure that the findings can be generalized to the larger population. So first, we need to define the target population. Clearly specify the group that you want to study. That could be college students in the USA, for example, diabetic patients over 50. What is the target population? Then you choose the sampling frame. This is a list or database from which the sample will be selected. For example, student enrollment records, hospital patient list, and why it matters because it should be as complete, as accurate as possible, to reflect the target population. Of course, the target population ensures that the sample is drawn from the correct population relevant to your research question. Then you determine the sample size. Decide how many participants you need. And why this is important? Because a sample that is too small may not be reliable, too large may waste resources, and we need to use statistical formulas to determine the appropriate size based on population, the size, margin of error, and confidence level, of course, expected variability. Then we select the sampling method, sampling method. Choose a method based on your research types and goals. We mentioned before about probability sampling, which is preferred for representativeness. So here, if you remember the types of probability sampling, we mentioned simple, random sampling, systematic sampling, stratified sampling, cluster sampling. You need to know all these definitions. And on the other hand, if you want to adopt no probability sampling, used when random sampling is not feasible, then we have convenience, a sampling, the purposive sampling, quota sampling, or snowball sampling. Then implement the sampling plan. You use the chosen method to select individuals from the sampling frame. Ensure that randomization fairness if using probability method. Check for bias and adjust if necessary. So evaluate whether your sample is actually representative. So look for undercoverage, the missing parts of the population, no response bias, people who don't participate differ from those who do participate, and document the sampling procedure, clearly describe how the sample was selected so that others can access or replicate your method. So the summary of this could be this mnemonic that you can use: population defined, the frame chosen, the sample size calculated, the method selected, implementation, bias assessed, and documentation completed. Now, variables is another chapter what we need to do, explain again. Clear explanation of independent, dependent, and control variables. So here, independent variable. Independent variable is what is changed or manipulated. Here, the purpose is to test its effect on the dependent variable. For example, in an experiment to test the effect of sunlight on plant growth. What is the independent variable? The amount of sunlight. The amount of sunlight will be 2 hours, 4 hours, etc. The dependent variable is measured or observed. It depends on the independent variable, and the purpose is to see how it responds to changes in the dependent variable. In the same example plant experiment I mentioned before, the dependent variable is the plant growth, which is measured in height or number of leaves. So you can understand the independent is amount of sunlight in an experiment to test the effect of sunlight on plant growth. The amount of sunlight is a dependent variable, and plant growth is a dependent variable. What is the control variable? The variables that are kept the same throughout the experiment to ensure a fair test. The goal here is to make sure that only the dependent variable is affecting the dependent variable. So in the same example, we have control variables, the type of plant, the amount of water, the soil type, pot size, the room temperature, which should be the same during an experiment. This is what we call control variables or constants. Independent variable, what you change, dependent variable, what you measure, and control variables, what you keep the same. This is, we can always remember this by three phrases: what you change, what you remember, and what you measure, and what you keep the same. Now, how do confounding variables affect research variables? Confounding variables actually affect the research validity by introducing alternative explanations for the observed relationship between the dependent and dependent variables. So first, there's a threat to internal validity because confounders make it unclear whether changes in the dependent variables are actually caused by the dependent variable or by the confounder. This undermines the study's ability to establish a true causal and effect relationship. Bias because they can bias the results, leading to overestimation or underestimation of the effect being studied, and reduce clarity because confounding variables muddy the interpretation of findings, making conclusions less reliable or valid. So, briefly, we could say that confounding variables can invalidate conclusions by mixing effects and making it difficult to determine what really caused the outcome. Controlling or accounting for confounders is crucial to maintaining strong research validity. The data collection now, here we can see a comparison table. We can compare different data collection and instruments. So what about each, of course, we can say which is the best because it has strengths and limitations and weaknesses. So first, about interviews, what we can say, interviews are often open-ended. It's about, the strength is that they offer in-depth data, they are flexible, they offer rich insights. On the other hand, the limitations is it's time-consuming. Maybe there are interviewer bias involved, and it's best used for when we want to explore complex attitudes, feelings, or experiences. When to use surveys? We can use surveys when we want to collect measurable data from many people. So surveys are structured questionnaires, often closed-ended. The strength is that it's quick to administer. We have large samples which are quantifiable. The limitation is about limited depth and the risk of low response rate. What about the focus groups? The focus groups are best for exploring group opinions and interactions. These are guided group discussions. The strength that it's interactive and covers group dynamics. The limitations is that it's about dominant voices that can alter results and logistics challenging. The observation, it's best for studying actual behaviors or processes. So it's about watching and recording behavior directly. The forces of this strength is that we have real-time data, which is context-rich data, and the limitation, of course, the observer bias, and which is limited to visible behavior. Enter the document or archival analysis, which is best for historical research or for policy analysis. And this is when we want to examine existing records or documents. So the strengths is that it's non-intrusive, it's about historical insights, and limitations. This is related with how this is limited to available documents, which may be outdated. So now the difference between interviews and surveys, some key differences. In terms of format, interviews are open-ended or semi-structured. Surveys, we said, that are mostly structured or closed-ended questions. In terms of data, for interviews, we have in-deep and detailed responses. On the other hand, surveys have broad superficial data. The interviews are direct, surveys are no direct interaction. Interviews, in terms of flexibility, they have high flexibility. Surveys have low flexibility. Interviews are expensive, time-consuming. Surveys are cost-effective and fast. And in terms of sample size, Interviews are usually small and surveys are usually large. So when to choose the right method, use interviews, for example, to get detailed insights and understand complex personal experiences. Use surveys when you want to collect standardized data from a large group efficiently. Sometimes combining both mixed methods give the best of results. So here is a guide to choosing data collection methods. You need to understand first your research purpose and questions. You want to describe characteristics, then you want to go for a descriptive method. You want to explore a new area, generate hypotheses, then exploratory. You want to look at to how to explain the relationships or causes, then explanatory. And if you want to assess effectiveness or impact, then you're going to adopt the evaluative data collection method. Your purpose shapes the best data to collect. Then you need to consider your research design. For quantitative research designs, for example, experimental, correlational, we need numerical data. Suitable methods here are surveys with close-ended questions, structured observations, existing data sets. For qualitative designs, for example, phenomenology, logical case study, we need rich detailed data. So suitable methods here are interviews, focus groups, open-ended surveys, and mixed methods, a combination of both qualitative and quantitative tools. Then we need to identify the nature of data needed. For quantitative data, we have numbers. For qualitative data, we have words, narratives, or experiences. Then assess practical constraints. The time, some methods take longer, for example, the interviews. The resources, we need to check our budget, our equipment, our personal availability. The accessibility, can you reach your target participants easily? And ethics, because sensitive topics may need confidential or anonymous methods. And then, of course, you need to evaluate data collection methods to match data collection to analysis, because quantitative methods, for example, need structured, standardized data collection. Qualitative methods require open-ended, flexible approaches. And to pilot, test your method. Always pilot your tools to check clarity, timing, availability. Try to revise based on feedback before full deployment. So, evaluate data collection. Check for the strength and limitation or the best use that I showed before, the comparison table. And the checklist for choosing the data collection data should include what are your research goals, what is the type of data you need, what is your research design, what resources and constraints do you have, which method best fits to your participants, how will data be analyzed, and have you pilot the method. Now, what is the significance of pre-testing instruments in research design? Pre-testing instruments is crucial for ensuring the quality and reliability of the data you collect, because it identifies ambiguities and errors. It can detect confusing, unclear, or misleading questions or items. And this helps clarify wording and improve question comprehension. Then it checks reliability and validity. It assesses whether the instrument consistently measures what it's supposed to measure. It helps confirm the instrument's accuracy in capturing the intended data. Then we evaluate length and format. It reveals if the instrument is too long, causing respondent fatigue. It ensures the format is user-friendly and logical. Then we test practicality and feasibility. So we check if the data collection process is smooth and manageable. We try to identify any logistical issues, timing restrictions, technical problems. Then we need to improve data quality, because it helps us minimize no response and errors during the actual study, and it enhances overall validity of the research findings. Finally, it helps refining scoring and coding procedures, because it helps establish clear rules for interpreting and analyzing responses. So in summary, we could say that pre-testing is like a trial run for your research instruments, surveys, questionnaires, interview guides, ensuring that they work as intended before you collect real data. And this reduces costly mistakes and increases confidence in your results. Now, how can researchers ensure the reliability and validity of their instruments? Remember again these terms, reliability is the extent to which the outcomes are consistent when the experiment is repeated more than once, and validity is the extent to which the instruments that are used in the experiment measure exactly what you want them to measure. Remember these two definitions. So first, reliability, so this means the instrument yields consistent, stable results over time and across different conditions. So how to ensure reliability? By testing, retesting reliability. This means, for example, administer the same instrument to the same group at two different points in time and check for consistency in results. Internal consistency, we use statistical measures like Cronbach alpha to assess if different parts of items of the instrument consistently measure the same construct. The inter-rater reliability, when data involves subjective judgment, for example, coding interviews, ensure different raters give similar scores by training them and calculating agreement. And parallel forms reliability when we try to develop two equivalent versions of the instrument and check for consistency between them. Now, ensuring validity, which means the instrument measures what is intended to measure. So how to ensure validity? Through content, the content construct and criterion validity. Content validity ensures that the instrument covers all aspects of the concept being measured. Experts review the items to confirm relevance and completeness. For construct validity, we test whether the instrument truly measures the theoretical construct. So how this can be done? Through convergent validity. What is this? Convergent validity correlates well with similar constructs, and discriminant validity does not correlate with unrelated constructs. Then we have the criteria-related validity. We try to compare here the instrument's results with an external criteria. So two types, concurrent validity, which is measured at the same time, and predictive validity, when instrument predicts future outcomes. And then with face validity, it's a subjective judgment by experts or respondents about whether the instrument appears to measure what it's supposed to. So some additional tips here is for pilot testing, you need to always conduct a small-scale study to test the instrument's clarity, timing, and functionality. So pilot testing is crucial. Then you need to provide precise and understandable instructions to avoid confusion, so clear instructions, and ensure consistency in how the instrument is administered, so training for administrators. After we have data analysis, when we work with quantitative data, there are several major methods to analyze it depending on the type of data, research objectives, and the complexity of the data set. So the major types of, major methods of analyzing quantitative data, we have descriptive statistics, and when we summarize and describe the main features of a data set, and common techniques here are measures of central tendency, mean, median, mode, the measures of dispersion, range, variance, standard deviation, the frequency distributions, counts, and percentages, for graphs, charts, histograms, bar charts, pie charts, etc. Inferential statistics, when we want to make inferences about population based on sample data. So what are the common techniques here? The hypothesis testing, t-test, z-test, z-square test, the confidence intervals. We try to estimate the range where a population parameter lies, and analysis of variance. We try to compare means among 3 or more groups. Correlation analysis, the purpose is to measure the strength and direction of the relationship between two variables. So here, the common measures is Pearson correlation coefficient for linear relationship, Spearman-Rank correlation for no parametric data. Then we have regression analysis when we want to examine the relationship between one dependent variable and one or more independent variables. So what are the common types? Simple linear regression, we have one independent variable, multiple regression, multiple dependent variables, and logistic regression when the dependent variable is categorical, yes or no. Multivariate variate analysis, here the purpose is to analyze multiple variables simultaneously to understand the complex relationships. So some examples, for example, factor analysis. We want to identify underlying factors or constructs. The cluster analysis, when we group similar observations into clusters. And MANOVA, multivariate ANOVA, when we want to compare multiple dependent variables across groups. Another type is time series analysis, when we want to analyze data collected over time to identify trends, seasonal patterns, or cycles. And here we use techniques like moving averages, exponentials, moving Riemann models, etc. And we have the no-parametric tests when we analyze data that do not meet assumptions required for parametric tests. And examples, one Whitney-U test, Kruskal-Wallis test, Wilcoxon-Singh test, etc. So here is how thematic analysis is conducted in qualitative now research. First, the familiarization. The researcher immerses themselves in the data by reading and rereading transcripts, notes, or text to get a deep understanding. Then they generate initial codes. They systematically identify interesting features or patterns in the data and label them with codes. These codes are meaningful chunks that relate to the research question. Then we search for themes. The codes are then grouped into broader categories or themes that capture significant patterns or ideas across the dataset. After we review the themes, the researcher checks if the themes accurately represent the data, refining or combining themes as needed to ensure coherence and distinctness. Defining and naming themes. Each theme is clearly defined and given a concise name that reflects its essence. And what is the writing? Of course, writing up. Finally, the researcher interprets the themes, illustrating them with codes or examples from the data, and explains how they relate to the research questions. Why it is important to match the data analysis method with the research design? Because it ensures validity of results. Different research designs generate different types of data. So they require appropriate analytical methods to correctly interpret this data. Using a mismatched method, this can lead to incorrect conclusions. Second aligns with research question. Each research design is structured to answer a specific type of questions. The data analysis method must fit these questions to effectively test a hypothesis or explore phenomena. It handles data appropriately because quantitative designs produce numerical data needing statistical analysis, while qualitative designs produce textual or visual data needing thematic or content analysis. Applying the wrong method might distort the data's meaning. It improves reliability and reproducibility because proper matching enhances the consistency of findings across studies and makes the research easier to replicate. It supports ethical research practices using appropriate methods, respects participants' contributions, and avoids misrepresenting the data. So in summary, matching analysis methods to the research design is key for credible, meaningful, and ethical research outcomes. Of course, the key ethical considerations, we have already in previous sessions, we have mentioned that participants must be fully informed about the purpose, the procedures, the risk and benefits of the study. So the consent should be given voluntarily, without coercion, and ideally in writing. Researchers must protect participants' personal information and ensure that data is stored securely. Anonymity should be maintained whenever it's possible to prevent identification. The study should minimize the harm, physical, psychological, or emotional harm to participants, so researchers must assess risks and take steps to reduce them. And the right to withdraw, participants should be able to withdraw from the study at any point without penalty or loss of benefits. Researchers should avoid also deception unless absolutely necessary. it is necessary and justified by the study's value. So any deception must be disclosed as soon as possible, what we call debriefing, and fair selection of participants, because selection criteria should be just and not discriminatory. Vulnerable populations require special protections like children or prisoners. Ethical approval, the study should be reviewed and approved by an institutional review board or ethics committee before it begins, and responsible data management, because proper collection, storage, and disposal of data, respecting participant rights and legal standards is important. Researchers should be aware also of and respect the cultural norms and values relevant to participants. So ethical research protects participants, maintains public trust in research, and upholds the integrity of the scientific process. Ethical constraints, of course, influence research design choices, because of designs must minimize risk of harm and discomfort. So participant protection, it's about confidentiality, it's about fair participant selection. Ethical principles require equitable selection of participants to avoid exploitation or unfair exclusion. The avoidance of deception. If deception is involved, designs must justify its necessity and include debriefing afterward. Ethical boards often require minimizing deception or exploring alternative design. This way we can ensure that research design is responsible and respectful towards participants, often limiting certain methods or requiring additional safeguards. So, informed consent, I mentioned before, it's important because it respects participants' right to make informed decisions about their involvement, ensuring that they voluntarily agree without pressure or deception. It's a fundamental ethical principle in research, protecting participants from harm and exploitation. It ensures participants understand the purpose, procedures, risks, and beliefs and benefits of the rights, so transparency. A legal protection because it protects both participants and researchers legally by documenting voluntary participation. So how you can obtain informed consent? By providing, of course, clear information. We should give participants a detailed explanation about study objectives, what are the potential risk or benefits, about confidentiality data handling, about the voluntary participation, and always the right that they have to withdraw at any time they want, and contact information for questions. Then you use a consent form, because a written document is often provided summarizing the above information, which participants read and sign. Then we ensure understanding, because researchers confirm that participants understand the information, often by discussing it or answering questions. The voluntary agreement, because participants must willingly agree without coercion, sometimes verbally or in writing. And some special considerations for minors or those who are unable to consent, parental or guardian consent or legal authorization is required. For online or anonymous studies, consent can sometimes be implied or completion after reading the information. And finally, before concluding, have the critical thinking. Given a topic, for example, design, when we have any topic, we need to think critically before designing a suitable research plan. The limitations of using a cross-sectional design for study behavior over time, this is another topic we can discuss another time. And thank you very much for your attention. When you have any topic, you need to first start with the title of the study, the impact of social media on the mental health and social behavior of youth. Then you have the research problem. How does social media affect the mental health and social behavior of young people aged from 15 to 24 years old? Then you examine the objectives to assess the extent of social media usage among youth. Then you define the research questions. How many hours per day do you spend on social media? Then we have the hypothesis, the research design, the population ensemble, data collection methods, the data analysis plan, and ethical considerations, of course, the timeline limitations, etc. So I think that we have covered this topic. Thank you very much for your attention.
Yes, thank you so much, Dr. Rania, for this well-structured and well-narrated research session on research design essentials. Yeah, so I'm very sure that our audience will understand. I mean, would have understood it very well because it was well-structured. Thank you so much for this amazing session, and we'll meet again with another topic. Yeah, Dr. Anya, you want to say something?
No. Yes, I think it was clear, and the audience can write any, question in the chat box, or they can contact
Yeah,
us.
they can write in comments or anything. You can send, put it in the comment box. Surely Dr. Rania can answer you later. Yeah, so you're most welcome. And we had quite a number of our good friends as our audience and our good supporters, especially from Georgia. Yeah, Georgia. They are every session they are with us. Most of the sessions they are with us. Thank you for your support, dear audience. We'll meet again next week with another topic under this research design. Yeah. Thank you so much. Have a happy weekend and see you
Thank
all.
you.
Bye.
Thank you. Bye.